Hello there! Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well, and I hope you're having a lovely afternoon and a lovely evening, and go and get yourself something refreshing to drink, because we're going to continue with part 2 of our story tonight. And we've got a very bolshy teenager who is very, very upset because a little boy who threw her doll into the lake all those years ago when she was 7 years old is reappearing in her life, and she doesn't want to see this little boy ever again. But unfortunately, it looks like fate has other ideas, and this young woman seems to have a very long memory. So let's continue with part 2 of our story tonight. Samantha Kushner watched her daughter furiously throwing her cell phone onto the countertop, as if it was a glass she desperately wanted to smash. She could see her daughter was wearing a thunderstorm on her red face. She handed her daughter the bowl of peas that needed to be podded, without saying very much. She realized that she might be about to be walking on glass. She watched her daughter sinking into the kitchen chair, slumping forwards in her seat in what appeared to be a crumpled, almost defeated posture. But she observed a raging fire going on in her daughter's eyes, and quite a formidable frown on her face, which made her attractiveness not so beguiling, because she looked as grumpy as a snapping turtle. "I wonder what's got into Carla," she thought. "She was fine before she spoke to Eleanor on her cell. I wonder why she seems so unreasonably pugnacious. She's as prickly as a hedgehog right now. What could Eleanor have possibly said to have caused her such desperate disquiet?" She watched her daughter cautiously, as her daughter worked away rather hastily through the peas, with what seemed to be angry fingers, and then she gingerly said, "Is everything all right with you, love? You look a little peaked, if you don't mind my saying so. Was it Eleanor Russo you were speaking to on your cell? She hasn't upset you, has she? I just couldn't help but notice how abrupt you were in the way you ended your call with her." "Mum, it's none of your business. Why do you always eavesdrop on my conversation anyway? Can't I have any privacy in this place, or is everyone in this house so intent on knowing my private business?" "Sweetheart, I'm not trying to be nosy, but as your mother, I'm entitled to look out for you. You're my daughter. And if you're upset and something appears to have caused you distress, because I can see you're angry, because no one frowns like you're frowning now without very good reason, and I hate to see you in such a state. You know a problem shared is a problem halved. You know you can talk to me about anything, and who knows, I might surprise you. I might be able to help." "Well, you must be the last to find out. You obviously don't know what's going on at the Russo ranch next door," said Carla, glaring at her mother. "Hasn't Kim Russo put you into the picture yet? From what Eleanor told me, she's tickled pink about the new arrangements, because let's just say a nice bit of eye candy has apparently moved into her household, but she doesn't know that there's nothing sweet about that candy at all." "I don't know what you're talking about, dear. I know Kim and I are close, but we don't live in each other's pockets, you know. I haven't spoken to her for a couple of days, although I did notice a missed call from her on my cell phone. What news are you talking about?" "Do you remember when I was 7 years old, Mum? That Paddy Russo, who is Eleanor's cousin, was staying with the Russos for about 3 weeks, while his parents went overseas. He was 7 years old, a nerd with blonde hair. He took my doll Stephanie and threw her into our lake. He knew how much I loved that doll, but he didn't care at all about my feelings. He played horrible pranks on us with his plastic snakes and spiders. He used to chase us around all the time with that water pistol of his, and he made sure we got horribly wet. He was one of the most annoying boys I have ever met in my entire life. I've never been so happy in my entire life as I was on the day he left the Russo ranch and went back to New York. I knew I'd never have to lay eyes on him again." "Oh, you mean Paddy Russo. I haven't seen that boy for years, but you're right. He was always getting up to mischief," said Samantha with a laugh. "Actually, I quite liked him. He had a mischievous spirit about him, which I did find rather endearing. You think this is funny, Mum, do you? I'm glad you find it amusing. Why is everybody laughing at my expense? I might remind you, Mum, Prt2of4 threw my doll into the lake, and as a consequence she lost her arm. Remember Dad tried to fix it, but was never the same. So I was left with a one-armed doll. Paddy was so thrilled he threw her into the water. I remember how he smirked at me. He was nasty. Good Lord, love, you were only 7 years old. I can't believe you remember all those details. And you sound as if you're still angry about something that happened an awfully long time ago. I'm sure it's water under the bridge now for everyone. You shouldn't take things so desperately to heart, love. When you're young, people can do very foolish things that they regret later on. But that doesn't mean you should judge them adversely for them. Besides anything else, if you must know, I had a soft spot for Prt2of4. He was a sweet little thing, really, and he did enjoy my chocolate shortbread, said Samantha with a laugh. Oh, Mum, not you too. Why are you saying nice things about a horrible, horrible boy? There's some things you don't forget in a hurry, and you know why? Because they're horrible. They kind of stick to your memory like superglue. I've never forgotten how nasty Paddy was. Well, fair enough, love. He might have been a bit of a nightmare back in those days, but lots of little boys can be described in a similar manner. But that was a long time ago, love. Why are you getting so upset about all of this? It makes no sense at all. Because that brat of a boy, Prt2of4, has only gone and shamelessly moved in next door, into the Russo property permanently. Turns out he left New York and is going to learn how to become a rancher. So Mr. Russo has very kindly taken him under his wing to teach him how to follow in his footsteps. Oh, dear. So that's why you're so upset. But doesn't he need to finish his education first? He's your age, is he not? Oh, that's been sorted out. Prt2of4's going to do his schooling from the ranch. Mrs. Russo is going to supervise all that for him, while he's going to devote most of his time and attention to working with Mr. Russo on the ranch so he can become a rancher. Well, that's great news. I imagine Russell Russo must be very pleased about that. It's great for him to have an extra helping hand around. It all helps, does it not? Good news, Mum. How can you say it's good news? Why are you being so treacherous? You know what Prt2of4 did to my doll, and you're making out that this is good news. It's the worst news ever. Goodness gracious me. What on earth is wrong with you, Kirsty? Listen to yourself. You sound like someone with a grievous axe to grind. Talk about overreacting. Why on earth are you harping on about a doll that a young 7-year-old boy threw into our lake years ago to spite you? It's not as if he killed an animal or something. It was a doll, for goodness sake. You're being incredibly childish, Carla. I think something else is really going on here. You're worried about Eleanor spending time with her cousin and ignoring you. Is that why you're feeling so outraged? If that's the case, I'm sure you've got nothing to worry about. You and Eleanor are as close as sisters, and I really don't think anything could ever come between you that would undermine your relationship with her, especially not a boy. But I think you will find having another young soul around rather fun, actually. That's not it, Mum. Don't you get it? I don't want anything to do with Eleanor's stupid cousin Paddy. I know how obnoxious he was back then, and I imagine he's exactly the same now. Does a leopard ever change its spots? I don't think so. Sweetheart, I cannot believe you're being so... Being so what, Mum? Go on, let me have it. Go ahead, criticise me, why don't you? I know how much pleasure it gives you to tear me apart like this. I don't want to criticise you, love. That's the last thing I want to do. I'm your mother. I'm just worried about you being upset. It's so unlike you to nurse a grudge like this. I think you're getting your knickers in a twist about nothing at all. I very much doubt Prt2of4 ever remembers what he did with your doll. I can't remember anything that happened to me when I was a 7-year-old girl, so I'm surprised you remember so many details of your life at 7. Oh, Paddy remembers everything, Mum. You better believe it. He made a snarky comment to Eleanor, asking how I was, and if I'd got over him murdering my doll by throwing it in our lake. and then I believe he cracked up laughing. And you think he's changed? Give me a break, will you? I'm surprised he remembered the incident with the doll, said Samantha, looking surprised. But I wouldn't read much into what he said. He was probably just being funny. Funny, Mum? I fail to see that murdering my doll is funny. Sweetheart, you were 7, for goodness sake. Why are you reacting like this? Your doll was pulled from the lake, and you cannot murder something that is plastic, can you? You know what, Mum? Said Carla, looking outraged, and rolling the bowl of podded peas towards her. Just so you know, Mum, I shan't be joining you and Dad for dinner tonight. For some reason I've gone and lost my appetite, and I wonder why. I guess I don't want to hang around people who are not on my side. And with that, she defiantly marched out of the kitchen and stormed up the staircase, slamming a door behind her. Oh dear, thought Samantha Kushner. Why do teenagers have to be so damn difficult all the time? What the hell was that all about? Asked Braden, who had suddenly burst into the kitchen, followed by the family's 2 black Labradors, Sparkler and Punch, who were wagging their tails profusely and eagerly dashing over to their feeding bowls to devour the biscuits and meat that Samantha had left out for them. Braden had witnessed his daughter's tempestuous performance as she'd marched up the staircase, and it certainly was a long time since he'd seen his daughter this angry. What's going on? Said Mr. Kushner, raising a brow. It's unlike our Carla to be so grumpy like this. The way she stamped her foot as she marched up the staircase, well, I don't believe I've ever seen her this irate. In a very long time. What on earth is up with her? Samantha sighed. It's her teenage hormones flying all over the place. She's been fixated over this issue, I have to say. Our daughter can be objectionably unreasonable at times, but today she's excelled herself in that department. What do you mean by that? Asked Braden. Well, our daughter's got herself into quite the tizzy. Frankly, she's being utterly ridiculous. About what? Asked Braden, going over to the sink to wash his hands, which he dried with a fluffy hand towel. Our daughter is upset because Paddy Russo has moved in next door with the Russo family. That's what all this irrational drama is all about. Anyone would think our house had been blown up or something, the way she's behaving. Teenagers, honestly, I ask you, who would have them? Paddy Russo? Asked Braden. Who the hell is he? Is this some relative of the Russos you're talking about? You mean you don't remember that delightful little boy, Paddy Russo? Goodness gracious me, said Samantha scoldingly. Even Carla remembers the young boy in great detail, I might add, and she was only 7 years old at the time. Don't tell me you've forgotten the little boy. Surely your memory isn't that vague. Look, sweetheart, I like to focus on the here and now, don't I? But no, I do not remember a Paddy Russo. But I imagine, given his surname, he must be related to the Russos next door. You don't remember the day a little boy with blonde hair threw our daughter's doll into our lake in order to rile her up and get some kind of reaction out of her. You had to retrieve the thing, well, and the arm was dislocated from its socket, of course, and our daughter made quite a commotion about the whole thing. She was desperately upset. Oh, that boy. Yes, I remember. He was a cheeky young thing, wasn't he? He was Eleanor's cousin, if I remember right. I think his parents went overseas for about 3 weeks or so, and Paddy Russo stayed next door for a while. I think Carla liked him in the beginning, but that all changed after he threw her doll into the water of our lake. After that she hated him and refused to talk to him again. Well, that's a relief that you actually remember. I was beginning to worry about you. What's Paddy Russo got to do with anything anyway? Asked Braden, looking puzzled. Paddy Russo is the reason that Carla is so grievously upset. It turns out he's moved in with the Russos next door, and Russell Russo has taken him under his wing, as the young man wants to follow in his uncle's footsteps and become a rancher. Well, that's jolly good news. I'm very happy for Russell. He always wanted his ranch to remain in the Russo family. And if he retires and Paddy takes over after him, well, he'll be over the moon about that, won't he? I mean, as a rancher, you want the fruits of your labour to stay in the family line, if possible. That is not the way Carla sees it. She's upset that Paddy Russo has moved in next door. But I don't understand. Why would she feel this way? Why should she concern herself with what Paddy Russo does with his life? If he wants to become a rancher, I say good on him. We need more youngsters like him, eager to follow in the old ways. It's not that simple, but boy, do I wish it was. Why do things always have to be so complicated? Said Samantha. I don't understand teenagers, really I don't. Carla is irate about what Paddy Russo did to her doll all those years ago, which makes no sense to me at all, because Carla doesn't even like dolls anymore. It's like being upset about your mother having scolded you when you put your hand in the cookie jar when you were little. Who thinks like that? It's so bizarre. At this, Braden Kushner raised a brow. You're kidding, right? You mean Carla's upset about what Paddy did to her doll all those years ago? Isn't she over all that now? She was little back then. But she's grown up now, isn't she? Well, I'd like to think our daughter has grown up, but I'm not so sure anymore. It seems she's got a very long memory, and is of the resolute belief that Paddy is as obnoxious now as he was back then when he was 7 years old. I cannot for the life of me get through to our daughter that people do actually change. There is no reasoning with her. She is so damned bloody-minded and cantankerous at times. I feel like shaking her to make her see sense. But she doesn't even know Paddy Russo now. That incident with the doll happened years ago. How can she be so judgmental? It's beyond me, love, said Mrs. Russo, dishing up some dinner for her husband to enjoy, after he'd hung up his jacket and removed his boots. He now took a seat at the kitchen table, where both Labrador dogs lay happily at his feet. What about Carla? He asked, looking concerned. Don't you think we should call her? She needs to eat, does she not? Just leave Carla be, said Samantha. I will leave a plate of food for her in the oven, to keep it warm for her, in case she gets hungry later. But she's in such a foul mood. I just think it's best to let her be until she simmers down a little. There really is no point in talking any sense to her, because believe me, I tried. She simply will not listen. She's built up poor Paddy Russo into being such a monster. And hopefully when she meets him at the barbecue on Sunday at the Russos, she'll change her mind about the young man. Or God help us if she carries on being this pugnacious and disagreeable. Honestly, at the moment, being in her company is like swimming around in a tank of bloodthirsty sharks. You're right, love. In the circumstances, probably best to leave her be. While she allows her anger to simmer down a little. How was your day, love? Said Samantha, sitting down opposite her husband, as they both began to tuck into their dish of chicken, biscuits and gravy served with peas, while the dogs continued to lay comfortably at Braden's feet, like they always did after exhausting themselves by running around the ranch all day long. Well, actually today something strange did happen, said Braden, taking a long sip of his ice-cold lemonade. Strange? Asked Samantha. What is that supposed to mean? Well, when I got up this morning I noticed one of my steers had vanished, and all the other steers were behaving very, very strangely. Never seen them like that before. They were standing close together and looking extremely flustered. It was clear to me that something was very wrong because they were upset, and the first thing that came to my mind was that a predator may have been in their midst. And that was when I discovered, to my horror, that one of my steers was actually missing. But I couldn't find its remains anywhere, or any signs that such an attack had actually taken place. I was actually going to call up Russell next door and ask him if his steers were all right, and if they had been behaving in any unorthodox ways. But in the end I didn't call him, as I could see Sparkler and Punch were barking at something in the woods. I walked through the trees, and there was my missing steer. I couldn't believe it. Oh, dear! Was he dead? Asked Samantha, looking very concerned. Do you know what killed him? That's very bad news. The last thing we need is something attacking our livestock. I mean, this is our livelihood, after all."
"That's just it. The steer wasn't dead. He was very much alive and well. Nothing wrong with him at all. There was no mark on him. He was fine. I can't tell you how relieved I was."
"What was your missing steer doing in the wood grove like that? How extraordinary!"
"It is strange, because how did that steer manage to separate himself from the rest of the herd? That's what I want to know,"
said Braden, still looking as if the events of the day had left him feeling rather bemused.
"That's the problem that I'm afraid has been irking me. I haven't got a clue, and you know me, I loathe mystery of any kind. I can't stand being left with more questions than answers. It frustrates me. Anyway, I took the steer back to the rest of the herd. The herd came over to greet their friend, but they were wary approaching him at first, almost as if they were slightly suspicious of him. But then curiosity got the better of them, and the steer luckily settled back into the herd pretty seamlessly. But I've never seen my steers behaving like this before. Even Starwell was in a very funny mood this morning, and that horse of mine is usually pretty chilled. I feel as if something strange happened in the early hours of the morning, but what it is I cannot tell you. And it unsettled all my livestock and animals. Anyway, once I'd safely reunited my steer with the rest of the herd, I went back to the woods to investigate. I'm not sure exactly what I was looking for, but I wanted to see if there was any possible plausible explanation that could make me comprehend how that steer of mine had been separated from the rest of the herd and ended up in the woods so enigmatically. But the most bizarre thing happened. Both Sparkle and Punch, who follow me wherever I go, were very reluctant to follow me into the woodgrove. They were snarling and growling, as if they could see something that I could not. I've never observed them behaving like this before, not once. I told them to stay where they were. I could see they weren't remotely happy about me going into the woods on my own. Something really irked them, and I wish to God I actually knew what it was."
"Well, that is very strange," Samantha agreed. "Do you think they could sense a predator, perhaps? Animals are very instinctive, you know. They can see things we don't, sense them as well. Think about those elephants, for example, in Thailand, when the tsunami broke. They picked up upon the paradoxical seismic activity, and they immediately went to higher ground and safety, knowing something was decidedly wrong. And as a result, they saved themselves, along with their handlers, from a catastrophe of note. Animals seem to have remarkable intuition, you know, and feel things that we fail to feel or even sense."
"Well, possibly it was a predator, but I'm not so sure, because the steer was not touched, and explained that to me," Braden said. "I couldn't see anything, but I felt something, if you know what I mean, and that certainly gave me pause for thought."
"You felt something?" asked Samantha. "What did you feel? You're not exactly explaining yourself terribly well, Braden."
"I felt as if something was watching me from the shadows," said Braden, wiping his moustache with the back of his napkin. "It wasn't just an ordinary feeling of being watched. It was something infinitely more sinister. I actually had chills running down the back of my spine. Something was seriously off."
"What do you mean by that?"
"Well, there was something insidiously evil in the woodgrove. I've never felt evil like that before. But I'm telling you, something was so darkly ominous about the place, so hauntingly unwelcoming, so very spooky. It gave me chills. The evil was so tangible, I could practically taste it on my tongue and smell it. Oh my God, the smell! I don't even want to begin to talk about that. I could smell death and decay and sulphur on the wind. It was vile, absolutely disgusting. But I couldn't for the life of me find the source of that smell. It was like as soon as I got close to it, it faded and became strong somewhere else. I mean, how is that even possible, I wonder? I've never known our woodgrove to become like this. It was as if I was in the presence of an evil entity of some kind, and let me tell you, it was very disturbing. I know it sounds strange, but I promise you it's true."
"Well, maybe you smelt a dead animal," said Samantha reassuringly, reaching out to squeeze her husband's arm in a soothing gesture. Death does not have a pleasant smell, as we both know. Maybe it was the smell that put you on edge. You're very tired, love. Absolutely exhausted you are, and I can't blame you for that. I can see you've got dark bags under your eyes. You've had a long, exhausting day. And losing a steer like you did, even for a short while, has ruffled your feathers considerably, as it would any rancher in your position. At least the steer you misplaced is now safe and well, and happily with the rest of the herd. And at the end of the day, that is all that matters. We could possibly put up some trail cameras and see if anything is stalking the steers. But I can assure you there is nothing sinister about our wood grove. We've been taking shortcuts through the woods for years to get to the Rousseau farmhouse for Sunday lunches. And to date, I've never experienced what you're describing now. Maybe after everything that happened with your missing steer, and the enigmatic way the dogs were behaving, made you feel conspicuously vulnerable, when in reality you're probably getting worked up all about nothing. Our imaginations can sometimes be our most formidable foes, but I do agree with you, we need to keep a careful watch on the steers, as something obviously upset them, and we cannot afford to have our livestock being stalked by a predator, that's for sure. But I haven't told you everything, said Braden very suddenly, reaching out for the jug of lemonade once again, to fill up his glass goblet all the more. He chugged the drink back quickly, rattling the ice. He didn't look comforted by his wife's reassuring words. Indeed, he looked peaked and grumpy, just like Samantha's daughter had done only moments before. Samantha hadn't noticed that her husband had been hiding a frustration from her that was making its appearance now known. Was there something in the water, she privately wondered? It would seem her daughter and her husband, along with her Siamese cat Thomas, seemed to be in a less than congenial mood at the moment. Thomas was normally affectionate by nature, but he had scratched Samantha earlier on. She had tried to pick him up and put him on the kitchen counter to give him a bowl of cat food, which was something Thomas had never done before. He'd never behaved like that. So everyone on this particular day was very prickly, almost as if all the planets were in retrograde. Samantha didn't know much about planetary alignments, but she had read an article once, explaining that the planets and the changing shapes of the moon could ultimately affect your mood, and she was seriously beginning to wonder if there might be truth to this theory. "I'm not sure I should tell you what happened next, love," said Braden rather scathingly. "You're already dismissing what I'm saying out of hand, making light of it. You're finding excuses for why I should feel so on edge when I was in the wood grove. But I'm telling you, something was there, Samantha, and whatever it was watching me, and it felt decidedly evil. You know me well enough by now. I'm not inclined to overreact or make things up. But I'm telling you, something was wrong with the wood grove. I still feel rather unnerved about my very strange experience. I didn't want to tell you about any of this because I didn't want to worry you. But honestly, something is out there, and whatever it is not good." "Well, if you say that, love, who am I to doubt you? Everyone appears to be behaving strangely today, and it's not just the animals. Maybe Mercury is in retrograde. Who knows?" "Oh, for goodness sake, Samantha, listen to yourself. You're sounding completely bonkers. Since when do the planets affect our mood? I've never heard anything so ridiculous in my entire life. I am telling you this. If I know anything, I know that the woods felt incredibly evil. Something was most definitely there. But frustratingly, I couldn't see what it was. You need to believe me on this." "I never said I didn't believe you, love." "Good, I'm glad to hear that, Samantha, because there's something else that I haven't shared with you. I was going to keep this part of the experience from you, but what the hell? It feels good to offload the things that have been troubling me. You've always been a good listener." "What do you mean, something else, Braden? I wish to goodness you wouldn't speak in riddles like this. It is very annoying. I find it incredibly frustrating. If you have something to say it, why don't you just come out and say it?" "Well, something spoke to me in the wood grove." "Something spoke to you?" asked Samantha, looking a little flawed, and privately wondering if her husband was losing his mind. But she tactfully said, "Go on. I'm listening." "Well, it was calling my name. It was saying, 'Braden! Braden, I'm here.
But I recognised the voice.
You recognised the voice, said Samantha. Who was calling you then? It wasn't one of the Russos, was it?
No, it wasn't any of the Russos. I would have recognised their voices. And then I wouldn't have been so freaked out, would I?
Well, then who was it?
It was my grandmother, but she's been dead for 25 years.
Oh, for goodness sake, Braden. Your grandmother was not calling you. What on earth are you like? You had a big scare losing that steer. You felt very disquieted after the experience, and you heard that voice in your head. I hate to say this to you, love, but you imagined it. Your grandmother's been dead for an awfully long time now, and despite what the psychic mediums might tell you, I don't for a second believe that the dead can talk to us. So you definitely did not hear your grandmother.
Well, I didn't hang around for long, let me tell you, said Braden. When my grandmother's voice began to call me, I shot out of the wood grove so fast, let me tell you. I do want to believe it was my imagination talking, but I'm sure I heard her voice. It is a very distinctive voice, and it definitely sounded like her.
Samantha rose to her feet, pushing a chair away from the table, throwing her arms around her husband to reassure him. I'm so sorry you had such a dreadful scare, love, but I'm sure it was all in your head.
You really think it was my imagination hearing my grandmother call my name?
Braden asked, sounding almost like a little boy that so desperately wanted to be reassured. But of course it was your imagination, love. You're bushed, aren't you? When you're tired, you can imagine all kinds of things. You need to go to bed straight away. It's been a rough day for you. You had a steer going missing in paradoxical circumstances. It makes sense you're so overwrought like this. When Samantha Kushner went to bed that night, she was very glad to be wrapped up in the cotton sheets of her king-size bed. She stared up at the ceiling, watching the dark shadows of the room, and she was caught up in the bubble of her own thoughts. She turned around in her bed to see her husband was fast asleep and snoring softly, and seeing him sleeping contentedly made her very happy. She lay back wondering why on earth her husband and daughter had been in such a state, but whatever was irking the both of them, she was sure it would soon blow over, and the dust would settle. She thought about what her husband had told her about hearing his grandmother's voice in the woodgrove, and she didn't know what to make of this bizarre experience he claimed to have had. Her husband was the most down-to-earth practical person she knew. He was brave and courageous, not allowing much to intimidate him. But this evening she had observed a frightened child in her husband, the likes of such she'd never seen before. She did not have any rational explanation as to why a steer would be found in the grove, and realised that sometimes with a mystery, no answers would ever be found. So there we are. That is the end of part 2 of our story. Part 3 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.